Have you ever felt lonely even in a room full of people? Even when your partner is right there sitting across from you at the dinner table? Even when your child is snuggled in your arms, safe and warm? Loneliness isn't always about being physically alone. Sometimes the loneliest moments happen when you're surrounded by people, but you don't feel seen. Hi there. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, Markella Kaplani, a psychologist, a parenthood and relationship coach, and a parent myself. Together, we explore the transformative journey of parenthood and its profound impact on our relationship with ourselves, our partners, and our children, so that we can be present and show up as we envision without having to do more. Let's get into today's episode. Maybe you and your partner just coexist, going through the motions, handling all of life's logistics, but barely talking about anything meaningful anymore. Maybe your friendships have faded, not because you wanted them to, but because life got busy, and now you're unsure how to reconnect. Maybe you have moments when you look at your life, a life you love, a life you chose, and still, something just feels off. The biggest untold truth about parenthood is this. Even when your home is full, parenthood can feel deeply isolating. Now, in the last episode, we talked about the identity shift that comes with parenthood. So if you haven't listened to episode number 47, I highly recommend that you go back because it lays the foundation of what we're talking about today. And what are we talking about today? Well, loneliness, and more specifically, how to recognize when emotional disconnection is happening before it turns into resentment. We're also discussing the hidden causes of this loneliness because, well, it's not just about having less time to socialize. And we talk about how to rebuild connection with your partner, with your friends, and with yourself. Oh, and one more thing. For those of you who want to dive deeper, who don't want to just listen, but crave to be the change, to put all of this to practice, well, come and hang out with me on my newsletter, where every week I send you curated journaling exercises to help keep you accountable to doing this great work you set out to do. In this week's newsletter, we're going to pinpoint where the disconnection may be and how you can start shifting it. You can grab my newsletter at markellakaplani.com/newsletter. I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. All right, so let's dive in. So I think it's fitting that we open up the discussion by honing in on why parenthood can feel so lonely, even when we're not alone, ever. Because when most people hear the word loneliness, they picture someone who's physically isolated, someone who doesn't have people around them, someone who spends their days alone wishing for connection. But the truth is that loneliness isn't just about being alone. It's about feeling emotionally unseen. It's about feeling disconnected even when your home may be full. It's about that feeling that no one understands you thoroughly. And this kind of loneliness is the one that is hardest to talk about because on the outside, everything looks fine. You're surrounded by family. You're in a relationship. You might even be busy all the time. So how could you possibly feel lonely? The reality is that loneliness isn't about how many people are in your life. It's about how connected you feel to them. And for many parents, connection starts to fade without realizing it. So if you've been feeling lonely, please hear me out. This is common and it's a real experience. And most of all, it's a sign that needs your attention, not a sign that something is wrong with you, not a sign that you should be doing a better job. So if loneliness isn't just about being alone, how do you know if you're emotionally disconnected? Because this kind of loneliness creeps in so gradually, you may not even notice it until one day it feels like a wall between you and the people you love. Let's go then through 3 signs that can help you pinpoint where disconnection may be showing up. take a moment to check in with yourself as I go through these. But if you're a visual or a kinesthetic learner, I've got you. These will be in the email that I send this week. So don't feel like you've got to write any notes, okay? So, number one is when you start to feel emotionally disconnected from your partner. This is when your conversations start to become purely about practical matters and you feel like you are missing, really missing those deep conversations that you once used to have. When you do try to have them though, they fizzle out very quickly or they feel forced and awkward. You may also have a sense of emptiness tied to a lack of truly feeling seen, understood, or appreciated. It's like you're just getting through the day together, side by side, but not really holding each other's hands. When was the last time you had a conversation with your partner that wasn't about responsibilities, not about the kids, not about work, but just about you two? When was the last time you were curious about one another, to discover who you are, to discover who you are becoming? If it's been a while, you're not alone, but having said that, this is an integral part of feeling connected as a couple. So let's just sprinkle a little bit of curiosity into these conversations. The second sign of parental loneliness is when you start to miss your old friendships, but reaching out feels hard and awkward. You think about texting someone, but then you talk yourself out of it because you're thinking, people are too busy, or you wonder if it's been too long to reconnect. When you do finally send a message, it feels awkward, like you have to explain where you've been. You might feel like you've drifted apart from people that you used to be very close to, and you don't know how to close the gap. Have you ever typed out a message to a friend and then deleted it before hitting send? That hesitation? That's loneliness hiding behind self-doubt. And the third sign of loneliness is quite obvious. It's when you start to feel lonely even when you're around people, even when you're not physically alone. You're surrounded by people, yet you feel like you're craving connection, laughter, or emotional intimacy. It feels like it's right there, yet so far away. You watch other people on social media or around you in friend groups sharing their life together, and you think, how is everyone else keeping it up? How are they feeling so connected? What am I doing wrong? It's one thing to feel alone, and then it's another to feel invisible and blame yourself on top of it. So now, I want you to check in with yourself. Do any of these sound familiar? Have you noticed yourself drifting, either from your partner, from your friends, or even from yourself? If so, take a deep breath. Because as I often say, awareness is the first step. And that is a step you've just made. So now that you have seen some of the signs and you may have a better idea of, yes, I am feeling lonely, let's look at why this may be happening even though you swore that this would never be you. I'm going to break down 3 key reasons of why this happens. Number 1, parenthood shifts your priorities without any warning. When you become a parent, everything changes, including your brain. Scientifically, it's been proven that your brain rewires to prioritize caregiving. Your focus shifts from what you need to what your child needs, from your own interests and passions to keeping the family running, from deep conversations with your partner to quick check-ins to make sure that everything is on check and gets done. And that shift is necessary, but also, it means that the things that once made you feel connected to the people around you are now getting deprioritized. The friendships that once used to feel effortless, the date nights that were spontaneous and fun, the small moments when you just talked without distractions, without multitasking, those things now require energy and intention. And energy is in short supply. So without even realizing it, the relationships that once felt natural now feel like a lot of work. And when something feels like a lot of work, it becomes easier and easier to put it off. Even more significantly, when something feels like a lot of work, especially as it relates to relationships, I would say, we have been taught that it's a sign that something is wrong. Not that we need to pay more attention to it, but that it's maladaptive, or to speak in the language of today, that it's toxic. And so part of us, though it's longing for connection, pulls away instead of doing the exact opposite, instead of reaching out. Secondly, the reason for this loneliness could be that you and your partner experience parenthood differently. I know that a lot of people want to say that women and men are the same. We are all human, and so we share the same experience, including parenthood. But that's not exactly the case. We are wired differently. And so while I advocate for sharing the load, for having equal responsibilities, and for dads to be involved just as much as moms, the truth is that even if they're doing the same things at virtually a similar extent, moms and dads will have a different experience in parenthood than one another. Even when you're in it together, one person may feel completely overwhelmed, while the other person may feel like they're being pushed aside. One person may feel like they're lost in parenthood, and the other one can't even understand why things feel so different. Many couples assume that the other person is fine, so deep conversations get pushed aside for more urgent things. And then, without even realizing it, you stop being partners first, and you start being co-parents first, partners second. It's not intentional. It's not that the love is gone. It's just that the relationship has shifted into survival mode. And there hasn't been space to shift it back. You have not created the space, because if the other person had cared to do it, they would have approached you, right? Or maybe they haven't approached you because they think everything is fine, and then that makes you the crazy person who feels like there's a problem. Another reason for the feeling of loneliness is that friendships also change. And that can feel like a loss. Friendships before kids were often built on spontaneity and shared experiences. You used to grab dinner after work just because. You used to plan weekend trips and late night conversations. You had time, energy, freedom, and so you were able to say yes to plans. But once you became a parent, the landscape changed. Your free time became rare and unpredictable. Your mental energy is spread so thin. Your schedule revolves around nap times and routines, and then your exhaustion levels. And what happens when you can't say yes to plans anymore? People stop inviting you. Not because they're rejecting you, not because they don't care, but because life has moved on and the rhythm of your friendship has changed. And after a while, reaching out can feel a little awkward. What do I even say? Will they think I'm weird because I'm reaching out now? What if we don't have anything in common anymore? And so instead of sending that text, instead of making that call, you talk yourself out of it. And the distance just grows wider. This isn't just a social shift, it's an emotional one. Because when you lose friendships, it can feel like losing part of yourself as well. And that loss is real. And it's important too, because you may think that my main issue is the distance forming between me and my partner. But we can't ignore the significance on our emotional terrain that friendships have. And so maybe it has started from how you feel about your partner and the problems that you're having in your marriage. But let's not ignore how important and how safe good friendships make us feel. And so even in the case that it hasn't started from the friendship, the fact that friendships are also being affected is important to tend to, is important to prioritize, because it will help you feel more like yourself. It will help you feel more connected. And that can trickle into the partnership as well and help you figure out ways to also connect with your partner as you have gained more of a sense of self and more power through your friendships. Finally, loneliness builds up because emotional needs get pushed aside for practical ones. When life gets busy, we focus on what needs to get done now, not how we feel. And so deep conversations and laughter and playfulness, they just quietly slip down the priority list, replaced by who's handling bedtime and what groceries need restocking, which appointments need scheduling. And before you know it, your relationship becomes all logistics and no connection. You're running the household together, but you're not truly sharing it together. It's not intentional, but it just happens. The longer we go without tending to our emotional needs, the lonelier we feel, even in a house full of people. When was the last time that you were asked, what do you need? Or better yet, when was the last time you asked yourself what you need? This is common, but it's not permanent. And because it's not permanent, because it is so common and we can do something about it, I am very excited to jump into talking about ways that we can rebuild connection without, however, adding an extra task to your already very full plate. Because the truth is that you can have this happen without more work and without a huge lifestyle shift. You just need small intentional moves toward reconnection. And I am going to show you exactly how to do that. Okay, so let's keep this short and sweet. Let's go through 3 simple ways that you can start rebuilding connection today, without pressure, without guilt, and without adding to your exhaustion. Step 1 is to make small moves every day toward your partner. Here's the problem. Deep connection requires space, and parenthood leaves almost no space. So instead of waiting for this perfect moment to have a deep conversation, start now with 5 minutes of a daily check-in. If long conversations seem overwhelming, keep it short and simple. But instead of the usual, how was your day, which usually gets a fine or busy as a response, try asking, what was the best part of your day? What is something that you wish you had more of? These open-ended questions open up the discussion. They open up the door for real conversations without feeling forced or super heavy. They leave room for a longer discussion because they catch us off guard. They make us have to think, which brings us in the now. When we ask each other these typical questions, we stay in our heads where we are planning out the next day or we are berating ourselves for something that we did in a less than perfect way. And so to snap out of that, we need to be asked, or we need to ask something unexpected. Another way to do this, or something extra that you can try, is to schedule one intentional activity together. Not something huge or some kind of elaborate date night. Not something that takes hours to plan out, but more like an intentional moment of connection. A coffee together in the morning before the chaos of the day begins. A short walk after dinner, even if it's just around the block. Watching a show together without scrolling through your phones. Sitting outside together after the kids have fallen asleep. Or something that is out there, something that is silly, something that is childish. I was reading this book by Julie and John Gottman, The Love Prescription, it's called. And they talk about how as couples, we start to lose the fun side of us that helped us bond, especially as we become parents, I would add. We stop being silly with each other. So this one couple that was very sanitized, let's say, very controlled, very by the book, they were prescribed by their therapist to have a mud fight. The couple was on the brink of divorce. And that mud fight, it helped them to lose control. They got to be carefree, to laugh together. These are all things that we associate with a new couple that is just getting to know each other, that is just bonding. No wonder that this helped them reconnect. To see each other as something more than just being co-parents and roommates that they have to live with, but as someone that they can let loose with. And no, you don't need more time. You just need more small, focused moments of connection. When you start prioritizing just small moments together each day, it naturally opens the door for bigger conversations, for deeper intimacy, and for feeling like partners again that prioritize each other, not just as co-parents. Step 2 is to reconnect with a friend without overthinking it. I don't know if you have pinpointed your loneliness to something specific, say your marriage. If you feel that your partnership is off and you attribute your feelings of loneliness there, it may seem like it's not so important to focus on your friendships. However, the fact that you may also not be connected as much to your friends is also taking a toll. So let's give reconnecting with your friends attention as well. One of the biggest roadblocks to reconnecting with friends is overthinking. So try this today. Send the text that you've been meaning to send. It doesn't have to be a long, deep message. It doesn't have to explain why you've disappeared and haven't talked in a while. Just something simple and real, like, hey, I know it's been forever, but I'd love to catch up. Or, I was just thinking about you today. How have you been? That's it. No overthinking, no over-explaining. Just open up the door to reconnecting. And if you've tried this before and it hasn't been working, if you've been struggling to rekindle old friendships, consider joining a community, an online one, a local parenting group, a book club, a support group for parents in the same stage of life as you are. Because here's the truth. So many people are feeling the same disconnection, and most of them are waiting for someone to reach out first. Why not let that person be you? And finally, step 3, beyond your partner, beyond friendships, there's one more connection that matters just as much, or even more. You, the connection with you. Because the loneliness doesn't just come from a lack of connection with others. It comes from feeling disconnected from ourselves. And if you've been so focused on everyone else's needs that you've forgotten about your own, here is where to start. Spend at least 5 minutes a day on something that is just for you. Not for your kids, not for your partner, not for work, just for you. 5 minutes. It could be journaling. It could be listening to music that you love. It could be 5 minutes of drinking your coffee without multitasking. 5 minutes of stepping outside, breathing, and just being present. Connection starts from within. And when you take even the smallest steps to reconnect with yourself, it creates a ripple effect. You start showing up more fully in your relationships. You start feeling more engaged in your own life. You start remembering who you really are beyond the roles that you play. And that is how real reconnection begins. So here is what I would like for you to take away from this episode today. You are not alone in this. Small steps can create deep connection. And you don't have to do this perfectly. You just have to start. So if this episode resonated with you, take action today and tell me what that is in the comments or by replying to my newsletter. Oh, yeah, right. Don't forget to sign up for that, right? So go to markelakaplani.com/newsletter where you will get notes, which you can also get in the transcript that's down in the comments below, but you will also have access to a journaling exercise that you can try out, and that can be the one action that you take from this. And then don't forget to hit reply because I read everything and make sure to reply myself. Next week, in the final episode of this series, we will go beyond just recognizing the problem. We'll dive deeper into reclaiming yourself without guilt, without feeling like you're taking something away from your family, and without trying to go back to the old you, to the person that you used to be. Because you don't need to erase your role as a parent. You just need to find a way to bring all parts of yourself together. So don't miss it. If you love this episode, share it and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. It means the world to me. And it helps me spread my message so that parents can finally let go of the shackles of shame and of guilt and of self-doubt and parent with confidence while also being true to themselves. Thank you for spending time with me on the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. I'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.